The metal walls of the council chamber reflected the light from 1,000 worlds. Commander Hyunwoo stood at the human delegation table, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him sat representatives from 50 different species, each one more powerful than humanity. Each one older, richer, stronger. It was the year 2347. Humans had joined the Galactic Council only 53 years ago. They were the newest members, the smallest, the weakest. Most species barely noticed them. Hyunwoo looked at his team. Ji-won sat to his right, her fingers moving across her datapad as she monitored communications. Doyen was next to her, studying star charts on his screen. Sora sat on his left, watching the other delegates with careful eyes. They were good people, smart people, but they were just 4 humans in a galaxy that didn't care about them. The council chamber fell silent. The chief speaker, a tall being made of blue light, raised one glowing hand. The emergency session was beginning. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a small green planet. Hyunwoo recognized it immediately. Vela Prime, the Velan homeworld. The chief speaker's voice filled the chamber. It had no emotion, just facts. The Korthax Dominion had invaded Vela Prime. 300 warships surrounded the planet. The Velans had no real military. They were scientists, artists, teachers, not soldiers. The Korthax wanted the planet for mining. They didn't care about the people living there. In 2 weeks, maybe 3, every Velan would be dead or enslaved. 4 million souls would disappear from the galaxy. Hyunwoo felt his chest tighten. He knew these people. Not personally, but he knew their story. Every human did. The chief speaker asked for votes. Would the council send help? 1 by 1, species voted no. The Thraxians said the Velans had no strategic value. The Morians calculated that rescue would cost more than the Velans were worth. The Pentarians simply shrugged their 4 shoulders. Not their problem. Hyunwoo watched the votes add up. No. 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 The pattern was clear. The galaxy operated on cold math. Help only came when you could pay for it. The Velans couldn't pay, so they would die. He felt Sora's hand on his arm. She shook her head slightly. Don't do it, her eyes said. Don't make this our problem. But Hyunwoo stood anyway. The chamber went quiet. All eyes turned to the human delegation. The chief speaker's light pulsed with what might have been surprise. Humans rarely spoke in council sessions. Hyunwoo's voice was steady. He told them a story. 73 years ago, before humans joined the council, a colony ship called the New Dawn had an accident. Its engines failed near the Velan system. 12,000 humans were stranded in space, dying slowly as life support failed. The Velans found them. They were a small species, only 5 million people total. They had limited resources, but they came anyway. They rescued every single human, all 12,000. They gave them medical care for 2 years while the ship was repaired. They shared their food, their medicine, their homes. They asked for nothing in return. When the New Dawn was finally fixed and ready to leave, the Velans refused payment. They said helping people in need wasn't a transaction. It was just the right thing to do. Hyunwoo paused. The chamber was completely silent now. He looked at each delegate in turn. His next words were simple. Humanity remembers. We're going to help them. The Thraxian ambassador laughed. It was a harsh scraping sound. The creature's scales rattled as it stood on its 6 legs. This was the funniest thing it had heard in years. The Thraxian spoke in broken universal language. Humans have what? 30 ships? Maybe 40? The Korthax have 300. This is suicide. This is stupidity. This is why humans will never matter in the galaxy. Other delegates murmured agreement. The Morians displayed their calculations. Humans had a 0.04% chance of success. The math didn't lie. Hyunwoo waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. Maybe we won't win. Maybe we'll all die. But we'll die doing the right thing. And we'll matter to the Velans. That's enough, he sat down. The vote continued. When it came to humanity, Hyunwoo voted yes. It was the only yes in the entire chamber. The chief speaker declared the motion failed. No council resources would be sent to Vela Prime. The session ended. As the delegates filed out, many of them looked at the humans with pity. Some with contempt, a few with genuine confusion. Why would anyone choose to die for strangers? Back on their ship, the Remembrance, Ji-won pulled up military reports. She didn't say anything, but her face said it all. Earth's entire defense fleet was 37 ships. against 300. The Korthax had better weapons, better shields, better everything. Doyen ran simulations. Every single one ended the same way. Total human casualties, complete fleet loss. The best scenario showed them lasting 4 hours. Sora contacted Earth directly. She spoke to the Assembly, the group of leaders who made decisions for humanity. She explained the situation. She didn't hide anything. If they did this, many humans would die, maybe all of them. The Assembly debated for 3 days. Some said humanity couldn't afford this fight. Others said it was suicide. A few questioned if the Velans even remembered helping the New Dawn. Then Admiral Minho spoke. He was old with white hair and scars from the resource wars. He had been just a boy on the New Dawn. He remembered the Velans clearly. He remembered how they treated human children like their own, how they worked day and night to fix the ship, how they cried when the humans finally left. Minho's voice was rough with emotion. The Velans showed us what it means to be truly human, to help someone just because they need help. If we abandon them now, what are we? Just another species counting coins while good people die. The Assembly voted. It wasn't unanimous, but it passed. Earth's entire defense fleet began to move. 37 warships, their best fighters, their bravest crews. They left Earth's solar system and jumped into hyperspace. Destination, Vela Prime. They knew the odds. They knew what they were flying into. But they went anyway. In the Remembrance's command center, Hyunwoo looked at his crew. Jiwon was rechecking weapon systems. Doyen was studying the Velan star system, looking for any advantage. Sora was composing messages to send to their families just in case. None of them spoke about the odds. They didn't need to. They all knew. Hyunwoo thought about the Velans. Did they know help was coming? Did they dare to hope? Or had they already accepted their fate? The hyperspace journey would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks to reach a world under siege. 2 weeks to prepare for a battle they couldn't win, but they were going anyway. Because 73 years ago, the Velans had chosen kindness over calculations. They had chosen to help when they didn't have to. And humanity never forgets. The hyperspace tunnel looked like a river of stars. Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, watching the light stream past. Behind his ship, 36 others traveled in formation. Earth's entire defense fleet, everything humanity had. They had been traveling for 12 days now. 2 more days until they reached Vela Prime. 2 more days until they faced an enemy 5 times larger than themselves. Jiwon hadn't slept much. She spent every hour running battle simulations on her computer. She tried different tactics, different formations, different strategies. Nothing worked. Every simulation ended with human ships destroyed and Velans still dying. Hyunwoo watched her work. He knew what she was thinking. They couldn't win this fight with weapons alone. That's when Doyen made a discovery. He was studying the Velan star system and he noticed something unusual. Vela Prime orbited between 2 stars, a binary system. Both stars were unstable. They had regular solar flares, massive bursts of energy that happened on a predictable schedule. Doyen showed his findings to Hyunwoo. If they could position the Korthax fleet at the right spot, between both stars at exactly the right time, the solar flares would hit them all at once. The electromagnetic pulse would fry their systems. Every ship would be disabled. Hyunwoo looked at the calculations. The timing had to be perfect, down to the second, and they would need to lure 300 enemy ships into that exact position. If they were even slightly wrong, the human fleet would be caught in the blast instead. Jiwon studied the plan. She ran new simulations. With this strategy, their chances improved. Not much, maybe 5% survival rate. But it was better than 0. The plan was simple in theory. Difficult in practice. They would jump into the Velan system and immediately attack the Korthax fleet. But not to win. Just to make the Korthax angry. To make them chase. They would lead the enemy ships away from Vela Prime deeper into the star system. Right into the killing zone between the 2 stars. Then at the exact moment the flares erupted, the human ships would jump to safety. The Korthax would be trapped. It required perfect timing. It required the Korthax to follow them. It required luck. A lot of luck. On the 14th day they arrived. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Velan system. What they saw made Hyunwoo's blood run cold. Vela Prime was burning. Cities were on fire. The orbital defense platforms were destroyed. Debris filled the space around the planet. And surrounding it all were the Korthax ships, massive and dark against the stars. Sora opened a communication channel to the planet. For a moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through, weak and breaking. It was Elder Ravik, leader of the Velans. Ravik was old now, ancient even by Velan standards. But Hyunwoo knew his story. This was the same Velan who had personally led the rescue of the New Dawn 73 years ago. He had been young then, strong. Now his voice trembled with age and exhaustion. When Ravik saw the human ships on his screen, he started crying. He couldn't believe it. "You came," he whispered. "By all the stars in the sky, you actually came." Hyunwoo felt a lump in his throat. He kept his voice steady. "You saved us once. Now we return the favor." The Korthax fleet had detected them now. Their sensors were good. They knew humans were here. 37 small ships against their 300 massive warships. It must have seemed like a joke. The Korthax commander, Warlord Craven, sent them a message. His voice was full of contempt. "Humans. I've heard of your species. Weak, emotional, foolish. Turn around and leave. This doesn't concern you." Hyunwoo didn't bother responding with words. He gave the order. "All ships attack formation. Target their command vessels. Make them chase us." The human fleet moved. They were fast, faster than the heavy Korthax warships. They swept in, fired missiles at the enemy command ships, and swept out again before the Korthax could return fire effectively. It was like bees stinging a bear. They didn't do much damage. But they made Craven angry. Very angry. Craven roared orders at his fleet. "All ships pursue. Destroy them. Show these insects what happens when they challenge the Korthax dominion." The trap was working. The Korthax fleet broke formation and chased the humans deeper into the star system, away from Vela Prime, exactly where Hyunwoo wanted them, but it wasn't easy. The human ships had to stay ahead, but not too far ahead. If they lost the Korthax, the plan failed. If they got too close, they would be destroyed. It was a deadly dance through space. The Korthax were getting better at predicting human movements. Their weapons were finding targets. The first human ship exploded in a ball of fire, then a second, then a third. Hyunwoo watched good people die. He saw ships carrying his friends, his colleagues, vanish from his sensors. Each loss hurt, but he couldn't stop. Not now. They were getting close to the position, the space between the two stars where the solar flares would converge. Doyen monitored the stars constantly. The flares were building. They had maybe 5 minutes. 4 human ships gone now. 5. The casualties were mounting, but the Korthax fleet was following. All 300 ships pursuing the humans right into the trap. Doyen counted down. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. The human fleet was at the edge of the danger zone. The Korthax were right in the center. 1 minute. Craven realized something was wrong. His sensors showed the stars building energy. He understood the trap. He screamed orders to retreat. But it was too late. 300 ships couldn't turn around quickly. 30 seconds. Hyunwoo gave the final order. "All ships emergency jump now." The human fleet engaged their hyperspace drives. Space twisted around them. They jumped away just as both stars erupted. Twin walls of fire and radiation converged on the Korthax position. The electromagnetic pulse hit first, traveling at the speed of light. Every Korthax ship's systems failed instantly. Engines dead, weapons dead. Life support failing. They floated helplessly in space, then the radiation wave hit. Even without the EMP, no shields could stop that much energy. The Korthax fleet was cooked. Not all the human ships made the jump in time. 13 were too slow, too damaged, or their drives failed. Hyunwoo watched them disappear in the solar fire. 4,000 humans died in those seconds. But 167 Korthax warships were disabled, the largest military defeat in Dominion history. And Vela Prime was saved. The surviving human fleet returned to Vela, 24 ships out of 37. They had lost more than a third of their forces. Earth was now vulnerable, but they had won. Elder Ravik contacted them again. He could barely speak through his tears. "You lost so many, for us, for people you barely knew." Hyunwoo looked at the planet below, at the 4 million Velans who would now live because humans remembered a debt. The price was high, but it was right. The Velans insisted on holding a memorial service. Every Velan, all 4 million, gathered together using holographic technology. They stood in silence for every human who died. Then Ravik spoke. "We gave you help 73 years ago because it was right. You returned that help today. You call this repaying a debt. We call it a miracle. We will never forget what you did for us, never. In the command center of the Remembrance, Jiwan allowed herself to cry. Doyen stared at his hands, thinking of the calculations that had killed 13 ships. Sora composed messages to the families of the dead, and Hyunwoo wondered if what they did would matter to anyone else in the galaxy. He didn't know that everything was about to change. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Within days, every species knew what humanity had done. They had taken their entire defense fleet, fought an impossible battle, lost thousands of their own people, and won. All to save a species that most of the galaxy had written off as worthless. The Galactic Council held another emergency session. The Thraxian ambassador was furious. This was exactly the kind of emotional stupidity he had warned against. Humans had weakened themselves for nothing. Now Earth was vulnerable to attack. The Morian representatives displayed more calculations. They showed how humanity had lost 35% of its military strength. They calculated Earth could now be conquered by at least 7 different species. The humans had gained nothing and lost everything. But something strange was happening. Species that usually stayed quiet in council sessions started talking. Small species. Weak species. The ones that powerful civilizations ignored or exploited. A delegate from the Cerelians stood up. They were a merchant species, always getting pushed around by bigger powers. The delegate spoke softly. Maybe the humans aren't stupid. Maybe they understand something we forgot. That some things matter more than profit. The Thraxian laughed at this. Profit is everything. Power is everything. Sentiment is weakness. But the smaller species kept talking, and others started listening. 6 months after the Battle of Vela, a Velan ship arrived at Earth. It carried Elder Ravik himself. The journey had been hard on him. He was dying. But he insisted on making this trip personally. The Velan delegation met with Earth's leaders in Geneva. Ravik could barely stand, but his eyes were bright with purpose. He told them that the Velans wanted to give humanity a gift. Not payment. Not a trade deal. A gift. The Velans would share all their technology with humanity. Everything. Their advanced power systems that could generate energy more efficiently than anything humans had. Their shield technology that could stop weapons nothing else could block. Their medical technology that could heal injuries thought impossible. No contracts. No conditions. No strings attached. Admiral Minho, now one of Earth's senior leaders, was shocked. This technology was worth more than anything humanity owned. Why would the Velans just give it away? Ravik smiled. His voice was weak, but his words were clear. You gave us everything when we had nothing to offer. You sacrificed your people to save ours. This is what real allies do. They give freely. They help without counting the cost. He paused, breathing hard. Besides, he added, we're 4 million people. You're 8 billion. If anyone tries to hurt us again, we want you to be strong enough to help. Call it insurance if you want. But really, it's just gratitude. Ravik died 3 days later, but the technology transfer had already begun. Velan engineers worked with human scientists. They shared everything openly, answered every question, held nothing back. Within a year, human ships had Velan power cores and shield generators. The combination of human tactical thinking and Velan energy technology created something new, something powerful. Human military capability tripled. The Galactic Council watched this with growing concern. Humans were supposed to be weak, insignificant. Now they were becoming strong, and they had done it without conquering anyone or stealing anything. They did it through friendship. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Korthax Dominion was collapsing. Warlord Craven had been executed for losing the fleet. Without strong leadership, the Dominion fell into civil war. Different Korthax factions fought each other. Worlds that the Dominion had conquered tried to break free. Everything was chaos. Billions of beings were caught in the middle. Refugees fleeing war. Children starving. Entire populations on the edge of extinction. The galaxy had never seen a humanitarian crisis this large. The Galactic Council met to discuss the situation. Their solution was simple. Close all borders to former Korthax space. Quarantine the whole region. Let the situation stabilize on its own. In other words, let millions die until the fighting stopped. It was the logical solution. The safe solution. The profitable solution. Ambassador Sora stood in the council chamber. She had been promoted after the Battle of Vela. Now she spoke for all of humanity. Her proposal was simple. Send humanitarian aid, food, medicine, shelter. Not to conquer. Not to control. Just to help people who were suffering. The Thraxian was getting tired of these humans. Again with this? Again with throwing away resources on people who can't pay you back? When will you learn? Sora looked at him calmly. Maybe never. Maybe that's the point. The council voted no on providing aid. But humans didn't need council permission. Earth sent its relief fleet anyway. Medical ships, cargo vessels full of food and supplies. Engineers to rebuild destroyed infrastructure. They went into former Korthax space where everyone else was afraid to go. Captain Yuna commanded the medical ship Florence. She was one of the first to arrive at a refugee camp on the planet Korthax Prime. Tens of thousands of people were living in terrible conditions. Disease was spreading. Children were dying. Yuna's team set up medical tents and started treating the sick. They worked 20-hour days. They saved hundreds of lives in the first week alone. One of the patients was a young Korthax warrior. He had been wounded in the Civil War. As Yuna treated his injuries, he stared at her in confusion. "You're human. My people invaded Vela. We would have killed them all. Why are you helping me?" Yuna finished bandaging his wound. "Because you're hurt." That's enough reason. The warrior didn't understand. No one helped enemies. That wasn't how the galaxy worked. But Yuna just moved on to the next patient. And the next. And the next. She didn't preach. She didn't explain. She just helped. Engineer Taeyang was rebuilding water purification systems on bombed-out worlds. Teacher Yunji was setting up schools and refugee camps so children could learn. Hundreds of other humans were doing similar work across dozens of planets. They didn't ask for anything in return. They didn't demand loyalty or payment. They just worked. Slowly, the people they helped started asking questions. Who were these humans? Why did they care? What did they want? A young Korthax girl named Isul had lost her parents in the war. She was living in a refugee camp on a destroyed world. She asked Captain Yuna the question that everyone was thinking. What does Earth want from us? Yuna knelt down to look Isul in the eyes. Nothing. We're here because someone helped us once when we needed it. We learned that when you can help, you should help. That's all. Isul thought about this for a long time. It didn't make sense according to everything she had been taught. Help was something you bought or earned. It wasn't something people just gave, but the humans kept helping. Day after day, week after week. And slowly, something started to change in the minds of the people they helped. The Cerelian merchants watched what humans were doing. They were a species that had always been pushed around by bigger powers. They saw how humans built relationships based on genuine care instead of profit, and they thought maybe that's smarter than what we've been doing. The Cerelians approached Earth with a proposal. Not a trade deal exactly, more like a partnership. They would share their merchant networks and trading knowledge. Humans would share their technology and protection. Both species would benefit, but more importantly, both would support each other. It was the first formal alliance humanity made after Vela. It wouldn't be the last. The Quentari were a species of refugees who had lost their homeworld centuries ago. They lived on stations and borrowed worlds, always at the mercy of others. When human relief ships arrived to help with the Korthax crisis, the Quentari remembered their own suffering. They joined the relief effort, using their skills as linguists to help humans communicate with dozens of different species. Another alliance formed. Then another. And another. Back on Earth, Commander Hyunwoo had been promoted to Admiral. He studied reports of these new relationships forming. Something was happening that the galaxy had never seen before. Species were coming together not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to, because they trusted each other. In the Galactic Council, the major powers watched with growing alarm. The Thraxians, the Morians, the ancient species that had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years. They saw their influence slipping away, and they didn't know how to stop it, because you couldn't fight an idea with weapons. And humanity had given the galaxy a new idea. That loyalty mattered. That friendship was real. That helping others made you stronger, not weaker. The galaxy was changing, and it all started because humanity remembered a debt paid 73 years ago. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Vela. The galaxy looked different now, not in the way planets moved or stars burned, but in the way species talked to each other, in the way they helped each other. The alliance of free worlds had grown. It started with humans and Velans, then the Cerelians joined, then the Quintari, then the reformed Korthax territories, grateful for the relief humans had provided. One by one, smaller species joined until the alliance included 17 different civilizations. They didn't build an empire. There was no supreme ruler. Each species kept its independence. But they supported each other. When one species faced trouble, the others helped. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was losing power. More and more species were ignoring council decisions and making their own partnerships. The old way of doing things, where strong species dominated weak ones, was dying. The Thraxian Empire didn't like this at all. They had built their civilization on strength and dominance. For 3,000 years, they had been one of the galaxy's major powers. They saw humanity's philosophy of cooperation as a disease that needed to be stopped. The Thraxian Emperor made a decision. They would prove that compassion was weakness. They would show the galaxy that power still mattered most. They would destroy the humans and everything they had built. The Thraxian fleet attacked without warning. They bypassed Earth and struck at New Sol, a human colony world with 8 million civilians. They wanted to send a message. Help others and we will hurt you. Care about the weak and we will make you weak. The attack was brutal. New Sol's defense platforms were destroyed in minutes. Thraxian ships bombarded cities from orbit. Within hours, hundreds of thousands were dead. Earth received the distress call. Admiral Hyunwoo, now commanding all human military forces, immediately ordered the fleet to respond. But he knew they couldn't reach New Sol in time. The colony would fall before human ships arrived. Then something unexpected happened. The Velans arrived first. In the 5 years since the Battle of Vela, the Velans had been working with human engineers. They combined Velan energy technology with human tactical designs. The result was a new type of ship, better than anything either species could build alone. 20 Velan warships dropped out of hyperspace above New Sol. Their shields, powered by advanced Velan energy cores, absorbed the Thraxian weapons fire easily. Their weapons, designed with human tactical knowledge, struck with devastating accuracy. The Thraxian commander was shocked. These were supposed to be the weak Velans, the species with no military. But these ships were strong, very strong. Then more ships arrived. Korthax heavy fighters, once the terror of the galaxy, now protecting human civilians. The young warrior Isul had grown up. She was General Isul now, commanding a reformed Korthax fleet that fought for protection, not conquest. Her message to the Thraxians was simple. You helped no one when we were dying. The humans saved us. We stand with them, always. More ships kept coming. Cerelian stealth craft disabled Thraxian command vessels before they even knew they were under attack. Quintari communications experts jammed Thraxian fleet coordination. A dozen other species arrived, each contributing their unique strengths. The Thraxian fleet found themselves facing 200 ships from 17 different species, all fighting together, all protecting the humans who had shown them kindness. When Admiral Hyunwoo's fleet finally arrived, the battle was already turning. The Alliance ships fought with perfect coordination. Velan shields protected slower human carriers. Korthax fighters drew enemy fire while Cerelian stealth ships flanked. The Quintari directed traffic, making sure every ship knew where to be. It wasn't just military coordination. It was trust. Each species knew the others would cover their weaknesses. They had learned this from humans who had proven that loyalty was real. The Thraxian fleet was being destroyed, not because the Alliance ships were individually more powerful, but because they worked as one. The Thraxians had numbers and weapons, but the Alliance had something stronger. They had each other. The Thraxian commander tried to retreat. His fleet was in ruins. Over half his ships were destroyed or disabled. This was supposed to be easy. Humans were supposed to be alone and weak. As the Thraxian command ship limped away, Hyunwoo sent them a message. His voice was calm but firm. You said compassion was weakness. You said loyalty was foolish. You said helping others made us vulnerable. Today you learned why you were wrong. Strength isn't just in weapons. It's in knowing someone will stand with you when everything seems lost. It's in the bonds you build when you help others. That's what we have. That's what you'll never understand. The Thraxian fleet jumped away in defeat. They had learned a hard lesson. The galaxy was changing, and they were on the wrong side of history. On New Sol, rescue operations began immediately. Alliance ships evacuated wounded civilians. Felon medical teams used their advanced technology to save thousands who would have died. Korthak's engineers helped rebuild destroyed infrastructure. The people of New Sol had been terrified. They thought they would die. Instead, they were saved by species from across the galaxy, species that came because humans had once helped them. One civilian, a teacher named Minseok, asked General Isul why the Korthaks had come. "Your people and mine were enemies once. Why risk your lives for us?" Isul smiled. She remembered being a child in a refugee camp. She remembered a human captain named Yuna, who had treated her wounds and asked nothing in return. "Because your people showed me that enemies can become family. Because when you were strong, you helped us when we were weak. Now we're strong enough to help you." That's how this works. Back at the Galactic Council Station, an emergency session was called. The Thraxian Empire had been defeated by a coalition of species they considered insignificant. The balance of power had shifted. The Alliance of Free Worlds now represented 40% of the galaxy's population. They controlled key trade routes. They had military strength that rivaled the major powers. But most importantly, they had unity that the old powers couldn't match. The Council faced a choice. They could fight this change and probably lose. Or they could adapt. The Morian Collective, the ancient crystalline intelligence that had always calculated everything in pure logic, surprised everyone. They released a statement saying they had been wrong. Their calculations had only measured material resources. They had never assigned value to loyalty or trust because they thought those things had no value. But the humans had proven something. Cooperation actually generated more benefit than exploitation. The Morians had the math now. The numbers were clear. Humanity's way worked better. Not all the major powers accepted this. Some still clung to the old ways. But more and more species were joining the alliance. More and more civilizations were learning that there was a better way to live in the galaxy. Admiral Hyunwoo met with alliance leaders on Vela Prime. They stood before the memorial to the 4,000 humans who had died in the first battle. The monument had been expanded now to include names of Velans, Korthaks, Cerelians, and others who had fallen defending New Sol. Ambassador Sora stood beside him. She had helped build these relationships, one conversation at a time, one act of kindness at a time. "Now look what we've created," she said quietly. "A galaxy that helps instead of hurts." "Not the whole galaxy," Hyunwoo replied. "Not yet, but we're getting there." He looked at the names on the memorial. Every one of those people had given their lives believing that some things mattered more than survival. That protecting others was worth dying for. They had been right. Their sacrifice had changed everything. General Isul approached them. She was young but carried herself with authority. Behind her stood representatives from all the Alliance species. "We should make this official," she said. "The Alliance needs structure, rules, a real government." Hyunwoo nodded. "But not like the old council. We build something new, something based on what the Velans taught us, that real alliances are built on trust, not contracts." They began planning a new structure for a new kind of civilization, one where helping others wasn't seen as weakness but as strength, where loyalty mattered, where gratitude was real. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of that change was a simple truth that humanity never forgot. Take care of your allies. They'll take care of you. 20 years had passed since Commander Hyunwoo stood in the Galactic Council chamber and announced that humanity would help the Velans. 20 years since a fleet of 37 ships had faced impossible odds. 20 years since everything changed. The galaxy was almost unrecognizable now. The old Galactic Council still existed but had little real power. In its place, the Commonwealth of Free Worlds had grown to include 63 different species. Not an empire, not a dominion. A genuine partnership. Species that had once seen each other as rivals now worked together. Trade agreements included mutual aid clauses. Military alliances were built on trust rather than fear. The very culture of the galaxy had shifted. On Vela Prime, the memorial had grown. It now honored not just the 4,000 humans who died in the first battle, but thousands more from dozens of species who had given their lives protecting others. The monument stood in the planetary capital, visited by millions every year. Admiral Hyunwoo was old now. His hair was white. His face was lined with scars and wrinkles, but his eyes were still sharp. He visited the memorial whenever he could, to remember the people who had made all this possible. 20 years of peace. 20 years of growth, 20 years of proving that cooperation worked better than exploitation. Then the Void Collective arrived. They came from dark space, the regions between galaxies where no one lived. They weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They didn't want planets or resources. They consumed entire star systems, breaking down matter into energy to fuel their expansion. The first warning came from rim worlds at the edge of the galaxy. 3 star systems simply disappeared, then 5 more, then 10. The Void Collective was spreading like a disease, consuming everything in its path. Scientists calculated that the Void would reach the core worlds within 5 years. Billions would die, maybe trillions. The remnants of the old Galactic Council met in emergency session. Their military analysts ran simulations. The Void Collective adapted to every weapon, absorbed every attack. Traditional warfare was useless. Some council members proposed abandoning the rim worlds, evacuate the center, fortify the core, and let the outer regions be consumed. Save what they could and accept the rest as lost. The Commonwealth had a different response. Ambassador Sora, now the Commonwealth's senior diplomatic leader, was clear. We don't abandon anyone. We find a way to save everyone or we die trying. Admiral Hyunwoo coordinated the largest military operation in galactic history. Every Commonwealth species contributed ships, weapons, personnel. The combined fleet was massive. But Science Officer Doyoon, now the Commonwealth's chief scientific advisor, had run the numbers. They had a 3% chance of success. 3%. Better than 0. But not by much. Then the Morians made an announcement that shocked everyone. They had developed a weapon that could stop the Void Collective. It would work. The calculations were certain, but there was a cost. The weapon required funneling the energy of 17 star systems through the Morian homeworld. The crystalline structure of their planet would channel the power and amplify it into a wave that would destroy the Void. The process would shatter the Morian homeworld. Every Morian would die, all 3 billion of them. The Morian consensus broadcast their decision across the galaxy. Their voice was the combined consciousness of their entire species speaking as one. For 3,000 years, we believed survival was the highest priority. We calculated everything in terms of benefit to ourselves. We thought the humans were foolish when they risked everything to save the Velans. We were wrong. We finally understand what you knew all along. Some things matter more than survival. If our existence means watching the galaxy burn while we hide, then our existence has no meaning. You taught us that value comes from what we give, not what we keep. Thank you for teaching us how to be truly alive. Now we will give our lives so others can live. The galaxy was stunned. The Morians, the ancient species that had always valued logic over emotion, were volunteering to sacrifice themselves. Admiral Hyunwoo refused immediately. No. We find another way. The whole point of what we built is that we don't sacrifice each other. We find solutions together. For 3 weeks, every scientist from 70 species worked together. They had never cooperated like this before. Felon energy specialists worked with Korthak's weapons engineers. Xerelian stealth experts consulted with Quentari theoretical physicists. Human coordinators kept everyone connected and focused. They found a solution. Not perfect. It required evacuating 40 rim worlds and would cause massive damage to 15 star systems. But everyone would survive. Every species, every person. The Morians were freed from their death sentence. But they didn't just step back. They contributed their incredible computational abilities to coordinate the battle. Every ship became part of a unified network, working together with perfect precision. The battle against the Void Collective was desperate and brutal. It happened across 12 different battle zones simultaneously. Ships from 70 species fought together, protecting each other, covering weaknesses, amplifying strengths. The casualties were terrible. 18 species lost their entire fleets. Hundreds of millions died. But they held their ground. The Void Collective, unable to adapt to the unified resistance of so many different technologies working in perfect harmony, began to fragment. 7 months of constant fighting. 7 months of sacrifice, but they won. The Void Collective was contained and eventually destroyed. The galaxy was saved. In the aftermath, the old Galactic Council formally dissolved itself. In its place, the Commonwealth expanded to include almost every species in the galaxy. Not through conquest, through choice. The new Commonwealth's first official act was creating the Velen Remembrance Protocol. Any species facing existential threat would receive aid from all member species. No debate, no calculations, no conditions, just help, because that's what allies do. Admiral Hyunwoo stood before the memorial on Vela Prime one final time. He was very old now. His body was failing, but he had lived to see humanity's dream become reality. Beside him stood General Isol, who had grown from a refugee child to a respected military leader. Ambassador Sora was there too, having helped build diplomatic relationships across the galaxy. Representatives from 70 species gathered to honor the dead and celebrate what they had built together. A young human cadet named Giwon approached Hyunwoo. He was nervous but determined. "Sir, can I ask you something? Was it worth it? All those sacrifices, all those lives lost just to help strangers?" Hyunwoo smiled. He looked at the memorial, at the names of thousands who had died. Then he looked at the representatives from species across the galaxy, all standing together. "Look around you, Giwon. 70 years ago, humanity was alone. We were small and scared. We had ships but not real strength. We had technology but not real power. Now look at what we built, not through weapons or conquest, but because we refused to forget a debt, because we believed loyalty mattered, because we understood that strength comes from what you give, not what you take. They called us weak. They called us foolish. They said our compassion would destroy us. But these people standing here today are alive because we chose kindness over calculation, because we proved that gratitude is real and loyalty matters. So yes, cadet, it was worth every sacrifice, every loss, every life, because humanity never forgets its allies, and now neither does anyone else." The ceremony continued. They added new names to the memorial, honored the dead, celebrated the living, and reaffirmed their commitment to the principles that had saved them all. The galaxy had learned many things from humanity. Better tactics, new technologies, diplomatic strategies, but the most important lesson was simple. True strength comes from standing together, from remembering those who helped you, from being willing to help others even when it costs everything. It had started with one act of kindness 73 years ago. The Velens had saved the New Dawn when they didn't have to. Humanity remembered, and that memory changed the galaxy. As the sun set on Vela Prime, casting long shadows across the memorial, Admiral Hyunwoo thought about all the people who had made this possible. The 4,000 who died in the first battle. The millions who died fighting the void. The billions who worked together to build something better. They had proven something that the galaxy needed to learn. That compassion wasn't weakness. That loyalty wasn't foolish. That helping others made you stronger, not weaker. Humanity never forgets its allies, and their gratitude had moved worlds.